Welcome back to the Real 411. I'm Dr. Chelsea McGee. Today, we're diving headfirst into a showdown that is as dramatic as it is crucial. This isn't just political theater. This is about power. Power that affects small businesses, families, and honestly, our Constitution itself. So here's the deal. Picture this. The president leveraging sweeping tariffs under emergency declarations, claiming unprecedented authority to drive his trade agenda. It's controversial and honestly is getting called out for stepping way out of bounds. Now, let's talk consequences. With tariffs hitting nearly every corner of the U.S. economy, from the price of cars to the cost of groceries, small businesses are shouldering the weight. There are CEOs out here saying, this isn't politics, this is messing with our livelihoods. But what's so fascinating, at least to me, is how this boils down to a fight over who gets the final say. Can the courts really limit a president who claims his powers are limitless? Or is this one of those constitutional stress tests that show us what democracy's made of? And let's not forget, this is not happening in a vacuum. Congress, global trade partners, the business community, everybody's playing a part in this. And the question is whether this legal clash will redefine that balance, or if it's just another battle in this ever-expanding war over control. So buckle up, because we're looking at what happens when executive power hits a brick wall called the courthouse. And the ripple effects, oh, they're more than just theoretical. They're personal, real world, and occurring. And as I always say, the story is never just a headline. So let's dive deeper into this tariff drama. President Trump's administration introduced these sweeping tariffs under a bold claim of emergency power. Now, this isn't just your garden variety policy change. It's like trying to move mountains, and we all saw the fallout, right? But here's the sticking point. The U.S. Court of International Trade, without exception, ruled that invoking emergency powers to slap tariffs on nearly every foreign nation is not legal. They basically said, you can't just wave the emergency wand and sidestep the rules. The court made it crystal clear that the Constitution doesn't grant the president unbounded authority. Can you imagine the implications if it did? Here's what the U.S. Court of International Trade had to say regarding the tariff dilemma.
After a federal court on Wednesday struck down President Trump's sweeping global tariffs. A three-judge panel of the U.S. Court of International Trade sided with a dozen Democratic attorneys general and a group of small businesses who argued that the president overstepped his authority by declaring a national emergency to impose his Liberation Day tariffs, as well as those in Canada and Mexico. A federal appeals court put a stay on the trade court's ruling Thursday while it considers the administration's challenge. But the White House says the legal battle will not derail the president's trade agenda. Here's Trump economic advisor Kevin Hassett.
If there are little hiccups here or there because of decisions that activist judges make, then it shouldn't just concern you at all. And it's certainly not going to affect the negotiations, because in the end, people know President Trump is 100% serious, and they also have seen that President Trump always wins.
Let's bring in our panel, Wall Street Journal columnist Kim Strassel and Alicia Finley, and editorial board member Kyle Peterson. So, Alicia, is this merely a hiccup, as Kevin Hassett says?
Well, I think it's a major setback and actually a major moment in American politics, American economics, and for the law. So what happened is the president invoked this 1977 law that usually allows him broad powers to impose sanctions on foreign countries.
When he declares an emergency.
When he declares a national emergency. And he said that the provision in the law that allows him to regulate, quote unquote, importation of foreign goods also allowed him to impose tariffs. However, no president has ever done that in the past. And now, in a very detailed ruling by a three-judge panel, the court said, well, no, based on the major questions doctrine and separation of powers, Congress did not give you this power expressly. You're exceeding your executive authority. And I think and blocked it. I think it's likely to be upheld on appeal.
By the next court that's hearing it, or by the
Federal
Supreme
Circuit, and I think ultimately up to the Supreme Court if President Trump decides to take it up there.
Kim, the president, or the Kevin Hassett, said that this was a decision by activist judges. You've read the decision. Does that sound plausible to you?
No, not at all. And in fact, one of the judges, I mean, two of them were appointed by Republican presidents, Paul. The reality is that this is a very straightforward reading. As Alicia noted, this is an unprecedented move by a president. And the major questions doctrine is a really important piece of this because, as we're now hearing, and as people who follow trade know, there are many other sections of different trade laws that Congress has very specifically given the president. They has to go through certain investigations and steps and hoops. Sometimes they are limited, but he has the ability to bring tariffs by other means. He avoided all of those and instead reached for this one because it allowed him to do, well, he thought it allowed him to do sweeping tariffs without all of the rigmarole that he's usually required. And that was one of the things that the judges said is, hey, you have other things, you're going to have to do a little work, but this is one that Congress did not give you. Specifically look at the ones they did, and so you are violating the major questions doctrine, taking an action where Congress has had no say.
That major questions doctrine says, Kyle, that before executive can move, it has to have, on big issues, it has to have explicit support in the law from Congress, and that's what they're saying Trump doesn't have here. The emergency declaration point is very important because just as a matter of law, and conservatives should pay attention here because Democratic president could declare an emergency and say on climate change, and I'm going to impose tariffs on countries whose policies on climate I don't like. Now, under this ruling, they would not be able to do that.
Right, or they could say, I'm going to declare a climate emergency, and so anything that is powered by gasoline that is imported to the United States, or any parts for gasoline engines are now subject to a 100% tariff. That, I think, is the importance of what the trade court has done here. This 1977 law has been used mainly as a matter of sanctions, so there's a bunch of Americans that get taken hostage in Iran, for example. The president can freeze transactions and do things like that. But what the trade court said is that the expansive power that the president is claiming here to reorganize American trade with every country on the basis of the emergency is not clearly a power that has been granted by Congress. And so they're deciding this case for this president, this specific instance of what President Trump has done here, but they're also setting a rule of how this law is going to be interpreted. And that's what the Supreme Court, I think, will do if this case gets up to the justices.
And the major questions doctrine was issued by a court that includes Donald Trump.
What's fascinating is that this isn't just a single court decision. It's like the courts are ringing a bell saying, hold up, there's a process for this. The ruling invalidated Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act for this purpose. It's a law designed for rare, extraordinary situations like national emergencies that genuinely threaten the country. But are trade deficits that kind of emergency? The court didn't think so. And honestly, a lot of economists would agree. But let's step back for a second. Are tariffs even a solid economic tool for leverage? Some folks argue, sure, they protect domestic industries, steel, autos, manufacturing, but at what cost? The ripple effects are undeniable. Higher prices for consumers, disrupted supply chains, and let's not ignore the weight they put on small businesses. People out there are asking, is this really the right way to negotiate in a global economy? And look, I get it. The administration's rationale is all about leveraging economic power to get better deals. But it's a gamble. Did it pay off? Debatable. Where I stand, the data tells a mixed story. But here's the kicker. This legal pushback, it's about way more than just tariffs. It's about setting limits, forcing accountability. Can a single decision maker override critical checks and balances? What does that mean for the rest of us, the ones footing the bills for these policies? And speaking of checks and balances, that brings us to the elephant in the room, the constitutional balance of power. Who really has the authority to wield the trade baton? Congress or the president? Because that's the next layer of this debate. And trust me, it's a big one. Let's take a closer look. Trade authority isn't just decided on whim. It's actually rooted in our Constitution, which gives Congress, not the president, the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations. And yes, this separation isn't just semantics. It's deliberate to prevent unchecked executive overreach. The International Emergency Economic Powers Act The IEEPA is what Trump leaned on to impose these sweeping tariffs. And let me tell you, this law wasn't designed for just anything vaguely labeled a national emergency. It's supposed to address genuine, extraordinary crises. But trade deficits, significant, sure, a national emergency, that's where the court drew a big line and said, nope. And the judges, they didn't mince words. They basically said, our system doesn't allow for anyone, president included, to have unbounded authority. Imagine for a moment what that kind of precedent could mean for other laws. It's like letting one person rewrite the rules without input. That's not democracy. That's chaos. Now, give me a moment to bring this home on a personal level. When I advocate for patients' rights, whether it's equitable care or challenging a big corporation's practices, it's not just about one battle. It's about maintaining a structure that holds systems accountable so they don't run all over us. Same principles apply here. Checks and balances matter. They matter so much is literally what holds everything together. What we're seeing play out in court isn't just policy debate. It's about reinforcing the very scaffolding of our government, protecting democratic norms, holding leaders to their limits, and ensuring due processes aren't optional. They're essential. This battle over the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, it's a very vivid illustration of why those boundaries exist. To me, this whole case is sending a strong message that no one, not even the president, can sidestep legal frameworks at will. And it raises a fascinating question. What happens legally and economically when those powers are reined in? So let's talk about fallout, because the uncertainty around these tariffs isn't just some abstract economic headline. It's hitting small businesses where it hurts. Take learning resources, for instance. They make educational kits and gear. Their CEO basically said, we can't plan around this chaos. Can you imagine trying to make decisions when tomorrow's trade rules look like they might flip upside down? And they're not alone. The Liberty Justice Center went to bat for other small businesses like spirits importers in New York. Their argument? These tariffs make it impossible to operate, let alone compete. And we're not talking luxury items here. We're talking about businesses that keep local economies alive, that employ regular folks whose lives depend on their stability. This undercuts all of that. And then there's the consumer side. Look, we're already feeling it. You, me, everyone. Higher prices at the grocery store, at the gas pump, you name it. Tariffs aren't just taxes on imports, they're taxes on us. So yes, families are asking, why are we the ones footing the bill here? What's the bigger plan? And honestly, I'm not sure anyone's been able to give a clear answer, to be frank. But wait, there's another level to this: global negotiations. Picture trying to strike new trade deals when the courts are saying, hold on, this tariff tool might not even be legal. It's like trying to negotiate with one hand tied behind your back. Our trading partners are watching this unfold real time, and it's not exactly inspiring confidence. Why would they lock into long-term agreements if the rules are this shaky? And here's the kicker. These tariffs were pitched as leverage to bring jobs back, reshape industries. But did that happen? The data is, well, it's messy. Trade deficits didn't magically vanish. Goods didn't stop flowing. They just went through different channels. So at what cost did we roll these dice? And this legal fight, it has people asking bigger, broader questions. Like, what does it mean if a single branch of government, or even one individual, can disrupt the flow of the entire global economy? What are the limits supposed to be, and who is setting them? So here's the bottom line. Tariffs aren't just tools. They're tests. Tests of power, of principle, and honestly, of whether the guardrails of our democracy still hold when ambition tries to bulldoze the law. Presidents can sign proclamations, but courts, they slap them back to reality. And businesses, honestly, they're the ones stuck footing the bill. This fight isn't abstract. It's about the cost of unchecked authority, the price of legal delays average Americans bear when political theater becomes economic policy. So, I want to hear from you. Should one person be able to unilaterally reshape global trade? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this episode with someone who thinks tariffs only hit foreign companies. Spoiler alert, they don't. And if you haven't already subscribed to The Real 411, we don't chase the noise, we break it down. Bold, relentless, unfiltered. I'm Dr. 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭 McGee. And remember the story? It's never just a headline. Until next time, stay sharp, stay loud, and stay committed to the truth.